Hello, everyone, and Merry Christmas, compliments of the season. Well, for those of you that are going to be watching this at this time, but anyway, this is a Christmas edition, countdown to Christmas. Today is I think it's the 17th of December, so it's about 8 days. So I'm trying to record a series of videos where I'll just be talking about how to prep for interviews because I found out that over the last 2 or 3, like this month, I people kept contacting me, oh, I have this interview, how do I prep for this interview? And I was having these conversations in several places. So I was like, you know what, how about I just record something? Because it seems like there's a lot of job movement going on. So if you're preparing or you're targeting a corporate communications manager role or something close to that, I probably will try to do one for, like a comms advisor officer, but it all depends. And then see if I can do for a level up. But let's see how it goes. But this is the first one. I'm going to try to do it in about 15 minutes where I'm looking at my clock, my phone, and all of that. But let's see how it goes. So, tips on how to prepare for a corporate communications manager interview. I first wanted to title this tips on how to ace a corporate communications manager interview. I was like, let me not overpromise and then under deliver, because I do want to give people like the false impression that if you do all of this, you're going to ace it. But I find that people generally don't know how to prepare for interviews, and they focus on trying to impress the panel and do not really think about what the panel is looking for. So I'm just going to run through what I think the sort of things that anyone will be looking for in a corporate communications manager. And I narrowed this to corporate communications because there are different types of communications roles. And even though you'll see that you'll find a lot of commonality, but this was really developed for people who are interviewing for like real corporate comms roles, like big organization, major organization that has hundreds, maybe thousands of staff, and you're going to be the corporate comms manager in charge of the entire organization, communications for the entire organization. So let's just start with this, and please let me know what your comments are. Put your comments on the platform wherever it is you're watching this from, so that I know what your thoughts are. And then if I need to do another one, I know what I'm going to focus on and all of that. But let's kick it off here and then let's see how it goes. And the good thing about doing these videos is that anytime anybody asks me again that they have an interview, I have something that I can just, watch my video and then let's talk after. Because I mean, these conversations just keep happening. Okay, so tips for how to prepare on how to prepare for a corporate communications manager job interview. Now, first of all, this is really important. You have to know the business and organizational context of the organization that you are trying to apply for. I hope you understand what I'm saying. In other words, if you're going to apply for a corporate communications manager role in a company that is in a particular sector, doing a particular type of business, please research on the business, research on the organization, go to the internet, check what they've been saying. If there are MDs or their C-suite leaders were at events, what did they say? If there were industry events, please do your homework because it helps you know what's going on in the organization at that point in time. Some of them may be going through a restructuring, they may be going through a transformation. These are things you can use to speak in the interview. Do your research, and thank God for the internet. I mean, in our days, when we used to we're going for interviews. There was no internet, there was no archives. You'd probably have to go to some library somewhere that keeps good records of newspapers, and you're looking through like hard copies of newspapers, and there's no way of telling whether the company you're looking for is actually recorded in there. So I mean, wow, but now everything is archived. You can go on the internet and you can find out what they've said over the past 10, 15, 20 years, depending on how long they've been in existence. You can go to their website and just scroll through the news releases and find out what is going on in their industry, in their business, in their sector, and in that organization as much as you can. If you have friends, in there, you can also speak with them. But I don't so much believe in that because some people are not so plugged in into the organization. So if you're talking to them, except you know that there are people that are really plugged in. But some people, they're just in the work and they don't really check, like they're not plugged in. They don't attend town halls. They don't know anything more than their jobs. Those are the kind of people you should talking to. So I would always say, go on the internet, find out what's going on websites, social media, get that context, understand it, and then that will then help you to situate like what the job is going to be like. Also go to LinkedIn, find out how many employees are listed there, start following the company on all their social media channels so that you can follow the post, see who is posting, who posts the most, and what are they saying, what are the comments. Find out as much as you can. Because when you have to speak, you have to be able to speak to their context. And what people are looking for is someone who is who is hungry enough and diligent enough to have found out, who understands where they're coming from. Let me just put it that way. And by the way, if it comes, you're interviewing for a corporate comms manager role, and you cannot even do this basic due diligence. Honestly, you don't deserve the job. You know what I mean? And because they look at it that you're somebody that you can't take initiative, people have to keep telling you what to do. This is like the basic thing you would do as a comms person. The internet was really made for us, to be honest, because I mean, I don't know how we can't do our jobs without the internet. So when I say a comms person, who doesn't know that you should consult Google first? You know what I mean? As a check first before you do anything that I really want to, because you really can't do this job without, the internet was what paved the way for communications to become the kind of profession that it is today. We need to understand that. Before then, it was just PR and very relationship, in-person kind of thing. But the advent of the internet was what created the space for the whole corporate communication space. So please keep that in mind. So use the internet very well if you're going for a corporate comms communications role at any level, but managerial level, my goodness, is you must do that. Okay, so now business strategy. So understand what the business strategy of the organization is. And if it's a big organization, it's a conglomerate, it's likely to have strategy statements on the internet. Do the AI search using Google search and see what comes out. Find out what they've said for 2024 or 2025 as the case, maybe what the direction is, again, and then think about how communications fits in. There would always be an internal remit, an internal communications application of that strategy as well as an external one. Begin to think about it and then see how the organization is currently illustrating that strategy in terms of what they're writing on their websites, what they're saying on social media, what their statements are. How are they, how are they expressing that strategy, in terms of what they're saying and what they're doing, and how is that resonating with the outside world, with the audiences and stakeholders. And these are things that if you are going for a corporate communications manager job, you should be able to, glean this from what is going on. If you are unable to glean what the business strategy is and how the communications strategy should fit into that or help to express that, then perhaps you're not ready for this role, because these are things that are easy to do. I mean, even I, as a communications consultant, the reason why I can go into meetings with people and advise them on their comm strategy, even without having a strategic session with them beforehand, is because I can glean insights from their digital footprint, from what they're saying, what their communications messaging has been like, and what I can get from the messages that is already out there on the web, social media, print, online, that kind of thing. So you need to be able to show that in the interview as possible. Then understand the job scope. In other words, read the job description. If possible, have a printout of it in front of you when you're being interviewed, whether in person or not. There's nothing wrong with having it in front of you. There's nothing that says that you must always speak from your head in an interview. I don't know why people have that impression, as in, you can make reference to pieces of paper and say, so long as you're not like reading from it, but you can glance down, particularly audio interviews, you can do that. Physical interviews, it may be a little bit distracting, but while they're asking the question, you can do a good look down, while you're writing and then you're consulting your papers. You should also be going in with pen and paper. I hope we all know this. So the job scope, you'd have read it up before time. It's important because you are going to speak to the job scope. Don't go into an interview telling us everything you've done and it's not relevant to the job scope. Understand the scope of the job. What's the scope of the job, the dimensions, how big is it? Are you going to be responsible for communications for the entire organization? How big is the organization? How many countries? How many employees? How many senior leaders are there? Who do you have interfaces with? All of these questions, and a good job description should give you a sense of that. If it doesn't have that, those are questions that you should in your response show them that you respond and say, well, I don't have the dimensions of the job. It's not clear in the job description or in the job application that was given. But I would imagine if it was like this and this would require this. Because again, if you are going for a corporate communications manager job, you need to know the dimensions are everything. How many senior leaders? How many companies? Is it a conglomerate that has 8 companies? Because you're going to be dealing with a lot of stakeholders. How are you going to manage all of that? Are you reporting to a general manager or a chief corporate communications officer? What's the dimension? Who are your key interfaces? And you would have like your reporting line interfaces, you have the business line interfaces, you have the functional line interfaces. You need to understand that. And even if you don't have the specifics for that job, you need to let them know that you understand that that's how an organization works. Again, this is for corporate communications, like really big organizations, because if you're going into that conversation and you're not using those kind of language, you're talking about business line, functional line, they already know that you have not worked for that kind of big organization before, and they're like, are you sure? So just be very careful. And again, I see a lot of people in communications thinking they can wing it, thinking that, oh, because I'm a good public speaker, I'm a good this, I'm a good that, I can go for a corporate communication job. Corporate communications roles are not about public speaking. You need to get that clear. It's about strategic thinking, it's about leadership, it's about understanding how to make an organization work internally effectively, first of all, so that it can begin to communicate externally and effectively. And I'll show you how this plays out. So if you know that you have not learned the rudiments of corporate communications, through like training, certifications, and actual working in those kind of contexts, please do not set your, as in, don't put yourself forward for this kind of role until you're ready. But then if you want to try it out and get called into it, go ahead. But you get into the role, you're likely to struggle if you do not know some of these things. And I'm not sure how much you can wing it on the job, to be honest, without people really realizing that there's a massive gap. It's not even possible. Yeah, even if it's a thorough interview, well, anyways, it's unlikely that the person will scale through. So you have to think about the roles and the responsibilities. What am I supposed to, what does the job entail? What's written there? What am I going to be doing? What am I responsible for? What's the skill? Note what is written there. Check for, is media there, is social media there, is website there, campaigns, events, publicity, look for all those things, is the word audience there, stakeholders. Again, if you're a corporate communications manager, the language of the role should be something that is in you. People should be hearing, they'll be listening for the language. When I'm interviewing in a panel, a few times when I've been called into panels, I'm listening for that language. And if I don't hear that language and I don't hear it in the right places, I already know that you're not in the space, and that person is not qualified for this role, because you would, or these are this is it's just like how, in medical terms, they have their medical terms for everything, and if you're not a medical person, you will not understand those terms and you've not been exposed to that. That's how it is. There's a language for corporate communications practice as well. And if you are not in the space, you will not know the language. You won't even know that certain things exist. So anyways, then leadership skills, that's also very key, because corporate communications is really about, you're helping the organization to be effective. You have to be someone that can lead, self-motivated, not waiting for people to do things, not asking for permission, able to take initiative, know how to work through difficult situations, complexity, manage difficult personalities as well, outcome focused and all of that. A corporate communications manager shouldn't be the one, you must know how to manage your bosses, manage your higher ups. You shouldn't be the one saying, oh, because of corporate politics, you can't get work done. Then again, you don't belong in the role, because the politics is not going to go away just because of you, and it's a big organization. So you have to be someone who is able to manage that space. So a lot of courage, a lot of confidence, professional expertise, and competence on the job, of course, is a given, because that also earns you respect over time. But leadership skills, the ability to lead yourself and lead the team and lead the organization, influence the organization without authority, it's very key. So when I say leadership skills, some people think that leadership skills mean when you are made the skill, when you become a leader, a position. This is not a positional authority. In fact, most corporate communications manager roles, you have like maybe 3-4 lines ahead of you, on top of you, but you have to be able to influence them. You have to be able to get them to do what you know that is right to do. And if you are not able to earn that respect, you don't deserve to be in that role. It just goes with the job. So if you know that you're not yet ready for that level of influencing without authority, again, just be going for the corporate communications advisor roles. The corporate comms manager role is not for you yet. It may not even be for you at all, to be honest, because I have seen people in roles who are doing corporate communications manager roles, and they're not assertive enough. They're not influential. They do not even try to be influential. And you just can't do that job that way. There are just some jobs that you can't. You have to have a certain kind of personality and a certain kind of passion to do it in the way in which you can be most effective in the job. Then again, so now I've talked about the organizational effectiveness side of it, which is on the left side. That's the context, understanding the business knowledge. I forgot to put that in there. Business knowledge is also very key. So whatever industry, again, let me talk about this a little bit. People have this perception that once you've worked in communications in one sector, then you can work in communications in other sector. In principle, perhaps, but in practice, no, because every sector has its own peculiarity. So for instance, I have a background in energy. I worked in the energy sector for about 22 years. long consecutively, and then one on and off about 1 or 2 years even before that. So cumulative, my energy industry experience is about 23, 24 years. And I found out that because of that, it's easier for me to earn the trust of clients in the energy sector. And it's easier for me to have conversations with the business where we're talking at par because I understand the business. I have worked in the business. I have served the business. I have grown in the business. I cut my teeth in the business. Do you know what I mean? So there's certain things that I know off the bat. The language, when they say certain things, I know what they're saying. I know how oil is produced. I understand. So they don't have to keep explaining things to me. You have to get to a certain level of technical complexity before you get to that level of having to explain things to me. But quickly, we can have a conversation in 30 minutes and we're talking about a lot of things. You don't have to explain. I understand. And we're mostly in the upstream. I think downstream is probably where you'd have to explain some things to me, although I understand a bit more now than I used to. But generally, that familiarity is there. So I find that, and I thank God for that. I find that the oil in energy industry, business people in energy industry tend to prefer to work with people like me than work with people who are comms people who they will have to keep explaining, no, we're not that kind of business. No, we do not sell to customers. No, we don't. Do you understand what I'm saying? So if you are someone that is hard, like maybe you worked in the bank, they won't even, as in there will be no space. It's the same way the other way around. So you need to be careful when you're putting yourself forward for a corporate communications manager job. Think about what you've done before. If you spent a lot of time, for instance, in NGOs, it's not likely that an oil industry, certain sectors would ask you in, except if there was some NGO related thing that was coming up with the role that they needed someone from that background to fulfill. So your background in terms of where you have gotten your expertise from, which industry or sector that you spend majority of your time in is important. Again, I'm not saying don't put yourself up, I'm saying bear that in mind. Because if there is someone else who has the same level of technical skills, but more industry depth, they're likely to go with that person. And again, that's all things being equal. Sometimes people will take a chance, but yeah, if it's an organization that is really looking for somebody to like hit the ground running, they're more likely to go with the person with the industry experience. So really just keep that in mind. So if you don't have that industry experience, you have to work harder at demonstrating that you can still you can still cope with it regardless. And I say this with all sense of I've said this before in some of my courses, and some people are like, yeah, Shola, what do you mean by that? It's something that people don't say, but I mean, I just have to say that's the way it is. And to be honest, I've seen people who came from other sectors, like come into the energy sector while I was doing the 9 to 5 there, and they struggled. They really struggled. And it's not just a comms thing, it's a function, I've seen the people who came from other sectors like in HR, other places, they really struggle because there's some things that happen in the industry, in the sector, but in energy sector that is unique to the sector. So if you come to the sector, for instance, like an HR person, and you're bringing the thinking from other sectors into how you want to manage employees in the energy sector, it's going to be, yeah, it's good. You're going to have a lot of drama, it's just because, and particularly in Nigeria, it's just not the same. So understanding that industry peculiarity at the corporate comms manager role, they prefer to have somebody who has that sector experience, or perhaps if there is a need to get somebody with a new or a different sector experience for some specific reason, then you may also lean into that. But just understand all of that dynamic so that you're prepared when you go into the sessions. So now getting into the practical, like comms work, this is when you now break it down. So internal comms, if you're going to be a corporate comms manager, conglomerate, big company, internal comms have to be under you, and you have to be able to demonstrate that you understand that internal communications is the lifeline of the company. It has a direct link to employee engagement, to organizational effectiveness, and it's more than just top-down communications. It's really about how you create an opportunity to build a shared vision, to mold the culture of the organization, and to help the leadership achieve what they would like to achieve, with the organization. So knowing that power that internal communications has to be the engine of the organization and get everybody moving in the same direction, to help people develop the right behaviors, to call out those behaviors that would rather not, I want to de-emphasize, all of that. So culture, behavior, systems, processes, and then, so what I have here is actually the structural side of communications, but then there's also the outcome side, which I didn't list, but I'm talking about that anyway. So for internal communications to work in a big corporate setting, there has to be a structure around it. There has to be standards, there have to be processes, there have to be policies, all of that. And if it's not there, you have to write it. So if you, I mean, I would be very impressed if I were interviewing a corporate comms person and the person is telling me all of this and they understand the importance of this and they're saying that as they come in, they're going to rationalize. It's a lot of work. People don't like to do it. They prefer to come into an organization where it's already set up. But what I'm seeing is that even though it looks like a lot of work, it saves you a lot of heartache at the end of the day. And once you are able to put these things in place, everything should be working pretty well. And most of the time, I mean, I've been in an organization where I was part and parcel of the team that built up the internal communication structure, policies, and standards, working with the subject matter experts in the team at the time. And we built to last. Everything that we put in place, every policy process is still being practiced till today because it works. It really works. But before we put it in place, there were a lot of chaos and chaotic situations where things that shouldn't have gone out went out and all of that sort of thing. But all of that changed once there was a structure around it. And it's last. Many of us have moved off those rules now. And it's do you understand? Built to last. So on the external com side, that's when you're talking media, brand and reputation, issues and crisis management, events and campaigns, stakeholder management, publicity, perhaps protocol, depending on the side of whether you are public or private sector, more relevant in public sector. So and that's important. So if you're applying for this in a public organization or a private public partnership, you also need to make sure that your language shows that you understand the difference between, the context that you're in and the peculiarities. So, so stakeholder management, events and campaigns, whatever it is, again, consult the job description and let the language of the job description guide you as you're responding to questions. So remember that they're looking for something unique. And what I see people is trying to push themselves as in, oh, it's me. No, somebody wants eggs. You don't tell the person, no, no, but I can be apples. Apples are nutritious for you to give, give me, have apples. The person's looking for eggs. They want eggs. So it's for you to show that you are eggs or you are as tasty as eggs. You know what I mean? In fact, you need to be eggs. That's just the point. That's what they're looking for. So you have to give them enough for them to believe that it's either you are currently eggs or you can become eggs or, you are the next best thing to eggs, But as much, the most important thing is you need to really convince them that you're a fit for the job and that you're exactly the person that they're looking for. There's also one other thing, which is, I mean, I think that's important at this level, but it's more important at the higher up. So maybe I should leave that out, which is really about, fit within the organization and all of that. So, I would leave it out at this level, but it's important, but I think I would emphasize it if I do a senior level action to this. So again, messaging. You should be able to have taken a look at the messaging of the organization. And it doesn't mean you get into the interview and start telling that their messaging is crap, but you should be able to just give a sense of you understand what they're trying to do, what their messaging strategy is and what they're trying to achieve. And even if you can't see an example of a coherent thought process in terms of how they approach their messaging, at least, let them see that you understand that messaging has to be purposeful and that it is something that is used to achieve a desired objective. Be very strategic in terms of how you talk. And of course, again, strategic thinking, you have to really show that, how you think and that kind of thing, and that has to come through. Again, KPIs, key performance indicators, success metrics. Again, I'm telling you all of this and I'm saying, no matter the questions they ask you, make sure that you talk on this thing. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying, because there'll be questions they will ask. They could ask you broad questions, but these things that I'm saying should come out in your response. And again, if you are really corporate comms manager level, you should know how to bring out the messages that you have prepared and what people need to hear to respond to any question. For instance, ask me a question about so why do you want to work in this organization? You can say I have no question like that here. I would answer, I'll say, because I'm somebody that have a passion for communications. I believe that every organization should be purposeful in how they communicate. And one thing that I understand about being purposeful is that it's important to bring structure into how you communicate and understanding of the business and organizational context, and then drawing communications as a way to achieve and create space and support for the organization to achieve its business and organizational objectives, both internally and externally. And the communications will work with the business to make that possible. First of all, by helping to build a shared vision within the organization, and then helping to illustrate engage with stakeholders out there that have interest and influence in our activities, and ensuring that we maintain our share of voice in such a way that we achieve our desired outcomes in terms of our business strategy. This will require us doing a number of things, amplifying the brand, making sure that we protect reputation, providing a space for us in the audiences where it matters the most. But we work closely with the business to ensure that at every point in time, we're creating the space and the support in the way that helps the business to work in the way that it's intended, that we meet stakeholder expectations, and we remain relevant in the conversations that is most important for us to have. So I have spoken there about the business. I've talked about the organizational cost as one of business strategy. I've talked about how internal communications and how it's going to help in terms of making the organization effective. I've also talked about external communication and stakeholder management and how it's going to help create support for the business. So I keep tying everything back to the business. I'm showing how my practice or our practice of communications is going to help the business succeed. So first of all, I'm really showing that business and organizational context. But the question they asked me, they didn't ask me, what do you think about our business and organizational context? Neither did they ask me, what are the bullet points under internal context? They asked me, why do you want to work here? So in that way, I am showing an understanding of the business. In that way, I am showing that I am a professional par excellence. I am showing that I understand the dimensions of the role. I am showing that I understand the interfaces. I am showing that I understand the role and the responsibility. I am showing that I have the assertiveness and the leadership muscle to take this organization to where it goes. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? So you build confidence through what you say. So no matter the question they ask you, you'll find a way to respond with the job. You don't now go into, well, I've always had a passion for communications. You know, I have a flair for public speaking. In fact, I remember when I was a no, sorry, you're in the wrong room. You know what I mean? Yeah, this is not an audition for Mickey Mouse. So yeah, sorry, and that's no apologies to Mickey Mouse, my favorite cartoon character. So anyways, messaging, strategic thinking, key performance indicators, success metrics, make it very clear. Find a way. I mean, and sometimes the opportunity may not present itself, but find a way. And then something you can actually write this as bullet points, so that you know what to say. But again, I would say be authentic. So don't go out there because I've done this video now, and then you now try to present that you're something that you're not, because you'll be found out. God help you if you have somebody like me on your panel. I can smell from like a far off, like from a mile off. So because if you're not living it, you can't show it. And it's somebody who has lived it will hear in your voice that this is true. And then again, even if you manage to like fake it and wing it through the interview, when you get on the job, what are you going to do? Particularly if in that team, there are people who really don't know what to do. And again, if it's in a conglomerate, you will struggle. And I'm saying this from personal whatever. So my honest advice, this is prepared actually for people who are ready for this level. And the people who have, you've gone through like the communications officer level, advisor level, you are able to plan campaigns, you've done a little bit of strategic communications management, strategic communications planning, and you're ready to really take on, this responsibility. If you're somebody transitioning from another function into corporate comms and you're doing this, that happens a lot. I honestly don't recommend that people bring in people from other functions. It's always a disaster. They just don't get it. It's almost impossible for you. I've never seen one person cross from other functions to do corporate comms manager job without getting training or certification. Either you went back to school to do a master's, or you went to get a certification from a professional organization like CIPR or IABC. You didn't do any of those, and you come into corporate comms manager job. They all perform poorly, all without exception. I don't know one. It's just that the organizations have a way of covering it up, but they perform so poorly. It's very, very bad. So yeah, they perform really poorly, and nobody really knows why. So they end up like blaming, okay, it's this happened. They blame a lot of things, but nobody just really understands, because very few organizations have actually had the privilege of having real professional corporate communications managers in role. Most of the multinationals do, but most of those who are not multinationals have never had that. So you know what it is like when you've never really had. It's like someone who hasn't ever worn authentic jewelry. You know what it is? You just don't know. You just don't know the difference. But the one if you ever get exposed to that, you know, oh my goodness. So what I've had all along has been below par. So I think that's so then project management and planning is also very key, because depending on how big your role is as a corporate comms person, there's a lot of work that you need to do, a lot of things you need to bring together. So you have to be very good at project management. Sometimes, I mean, the media space, so many things going on at the same time. It doesn't give you an opportunity to be like, oh, we're running this campaign, therefore we can't do that. You're going to do that. You'll be running crisis on one hand, managing issues on the other, still running your conferences and events and campaigns, so you must have a team. Even if you don't have a big team in-house, you must have agencies that are supporting you, and you must have a way of keeping things going and making sure everything goes. So project management is an absolute key for you. And it's not for you to be getting involved in the nitty-gritty of the details, but being able to keep things going as oversight project management and putting, like a structure in place that ensures that, first of all, competent people or competent third-party resources are handling things, and that you are getting the reporting and you are maintaining the oversight. And single point accountability, you're taking responsibility for performance and delivery, and of course also doing your best to make sure that you coach and you mentor people and you bring them up to the level. So you see, you really can't be a corporate communications manager if you haven't had some solid years of experience. I think that corporate comms manager's job, depending on how big the conglomerate, like maybe 1,000, I mean anything more than 1,000, I think you would need 10 solid years as a in communications, like 10 years in comms to be able to do it well. I don't think 5 years can get you that for a conglomerate, but you can be running like those small companies and be calling yourself calls manager. But conglomerates, public sector, for public sector self, depending on the dimensions, some job you need like 15 solid years, maybe like 5 years in PR and then 10 years in comms. But for a corporate comms manager job, I think you really need 10 solid years in comms, and where you'd have had like some stints in internal comms in all these areas. Otherwise, you will struggle. You'll struggle. And I'm saying this just that I don't have too much time to go into the nitty-gritties of this, but anyways. So, and by the way, we have I think I'll just end with this point. So we have and a learning, in case you want to do a quick run through what it takes to be a like strategic comms training and all of that, we have an ELMS play on demand course online, which you can sign up for and just watch over the holidays if you so desire, or to prepare you for your interview. Yeah, so, and of course, it's an interactive program, so you can always ask questions, you can stop and play. You have like 6 weeks in which you can immerse yourself in the content, so that should be helpful for you. And I will share the details of that in case anyone is interested. That wasn't actually planned, but we might as well. So like I said, it's important to know how all of this comes together. It's, so in that process, you make sure you're bringing everything together. So the connection between the business side, organizational knowledge, context, the job dimensions, and then how you bring it to bear in terms of the elements of the profession itself. So business function working together, to achieve one goal, one objective. So that showing that sense of how everything comes together, and just you're doing communications for business, not just communications for communication's sake or communications for public sector. The understanding agenda setting communications is not just, you're not just doing, it's not just activities, but it's about outcomes. Understanding that big picture is really important at the communications manager level. So I was saying, if you need to build you want to apply for this role and you think that you need a little bit more oomph, you need to understand a little bit more about the language. Like I said, ideally, I think a corporate comms manager should be at least 10 years in. You want to have a bit of a refresh or jog yourself or be more familiar. Yes, you could also, I mean, something you could do is actually access our Play on Demand course. We have 6 modules of our strategic communications, CPDSO accredited training, accessible online now. You can click on this, and access it. And it's a paid course, and you have access to it for about 6 weeks. 6 modules taken through the entire strategic communications process, internal comms, and all of that. Again, like I said, if you are really going for a corporate comms manager job, these are things that you should already know. But then it's also possible that you want to do a little bit of a refresh and all of that. So you can also drop us an email at training@sholabuluassociates.com if this is something that you're interested in. I can walk you through the process. So anyways, that is my Christmas edition, tips on how to prepare for a corporate communications manager role. And I do hope that it was useful for you. And so I Can't promise that I'll do another video before the holidays, but if not, well, if not, let me just say I wish you a Merry Christmas and a prosperous and a happy New Year. And we'll see you in 2025. By God's grace, I'm looking forward to it. So enjoy. And thanks for staying tuned. And by the way, like, follow, subscribe, comment. Thank you.